This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode, I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 35 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today we're talking about making friends through travel. I always feel like the friends that I've made along my travels over the years are some of the best friends I have. They're so like-minded, so lovely, and we've always got interesting stories to share about how we met and the things we've done together. In fact, if I look through my list of friends on Facebook, then there's quite a number of them who are people I've met on my travels, and it just always brightens my day to see and hear from them. So we're going to talk a lot about how we make friends on our travels and the benefits and how wonderful it is, and some just happy stories about that. But speaking of Face Group, firstly, if you haven't yet joined our Thoughtful Travellers group on Facebook, then do come along. We're having some lovely conversations. It's always nice to chat with like-minded travel lovers. So just search for Thoughtful Travellers on Facebook and you should find us. We're Travellers with 2 L's. So have a look for us, or just shoot me a message some other way and I'll sign you up. On with the stories, because we've got lots of them today. My first guest is Julie Jones from Have Wheelchair Will Travel. Now, I've followed Julie online for a few years because her blog is fabulous, and we finally met in person at the Pro Blogger Conference on the Gold Coast earlier this year. And as I expected, just because I thought I knew her through her blog, we got along really well, and it was so great to chat to her again for the podcast. We also, and this is important because we kind of refer to it during our chat, we discovered quite an amazing coincidence that we both started our love of travel at the age of 9. Our parents both took us to Europe, from Australia to Europe, to travel around for 6 months. At the same age, the same destination for the same time, which is pretty amazing to me, I think, because it was definitely a rare thing to do. Julie and I chatted about how amazing our parents were for doing it with, no internet and barely any information and all of these other barriers. So I thought that was a really fun coincidence. And Julie's got some great stories to tell about the friends she's made on her travels.
We've had some amazing friendships, probably the best ones. So when I travel with my parents, we actually stayed in a lot of houses of people. So we, stayed, they would have before Airbnb was even Airbnb, that was what we were staying in, people's homes.
Oh, fabulous.
And we, to this day, still correspond with people all around the world from that trip.
Wow.
And even one lady we stayed with in Luxembourg, we had stayed with her when I was 9, and then we stayed with her when I was 17. And then my husband and I went back and stayed with her before children, like when we were just travelling around Europe as a couple. And she actually left me this beautiful tablecloth that was like a family heirloom that was all hand sewn and beautifully done. So I think the friendships that you make can never be underestimated because they're just beautiful. And I always feel that when you're traveling, you're actually more open to experience that as well. I just find that when we travel, it's amazing how many more people we talk to. I can catch a train in and out of Sydney, half a dozen times and not speak to anyone unless they actually ask me a question. But when we travel overseas, it just seems amazing. I don't know whether it's our demeanour, whether we're more open to it, whether I don't know what it is about travel, but I just think that whether it's a relaxed state, I'm not sure, but we've certainly made some really special friendships out of travel. So yeah,
That's amazing with the lady in Luxembourg. What a beautiful story.
Yeah, she was really, and especially to have sort of seen her over so many phases of my life, sort of when I was 9 and just a child, and then when I was 17 and just sort of, hitting adulthood, and then to go back as a married person with my husband was really lovely. So
that's fabulous. Wow.
Yeah, and she had no children, so she took a real interest, I guess. And yeah, but we had another family in Austria, and I mean, it's funny because people's lives change so much, but you still keep in contact. So they've, divorced and their children have grown up, and then new wife came on the scene and all the rest of it. But, we still correspond and keep in touch. So, yeah, it's really special.
It is really special, isn't it? And yeah, it's a really good question you pose there. Why is it that it's easier to be open to those kind of new friendships when you're traveling? And I don't know the answer either, but I've, had similar experiences. So especially when we were our 6 months in Europe, when we were camper vanning, we'd always make lots of friends at the campsites because people would be all, especially in summer, people were all outside and people were really intrigued. We had like an Australian flag sticker on the van because someone had suggested to us that was a smart idea.
That was a real thing though, wasn't it? Anyway, I remember when we even picked up our car in London, you got your sticker for the country and everyone travelling around knew what country you're from.
Well, yeah, that's true, exactly, yeah. And I think it just opened up a lot of, people probably, a lot of them hadn't met many Australians back then, especially, a family of them with, 2 little girls. So, yeah, we made lots of interesting friends. I still remember so many of them so clearly.
Did you keep in contact with any?
For a while we did, like as a family for probably many years, and a few, we met this gorgeous couple. Initially, I think we met them first in Italy, and they were called Pookie and Jean. I don't know what his real name was, but we always called him Pookie. And they were British, and they would go every summer to Greece. I think we must have met them before we took the ferry to Greece, and then we camped with them in Greece and met up with them somewhere else. And then when we went back to England, we went to stay with them for a while, and we kept in touch with them for many years. But they were elderly, and we lost contact pre-internet days, and I assume they've since passed away. But it's people like that. It was just such like they were extra grandparents for us. It was just beautiful. Yeah, so that sort of stuff doesn't really happen on the day-to-day commute or at the supermarket queue. So yeah,
no, it doesn't either. And I think I'm fairly friendly with people in general, but I guess you're just busy, and I don't know, when you're on travel. And I think the other thing in travel often is that you catch up with the same people. People tend to be doing the same sort of route when they're traveling. And so I know even in Australia, we'd sort of leave Uluru, and then we'd see people in Alice Springs, and then we'd leave Alice Springs, and in Darwin you cross paths with people, which seemed amazing. But I guess the fact is people are doing a very similar itinerary.
Yes.
And therefore you tend to catch up with them again, and then you chat about, what you've done and what you saw and what was good and what wasn't. But I was recently telling somebody about Uluru, watching the sunset at Uluru. And I was just saying what an amazing atmosphere it was, and how when people are travelling they do seem to be much more open, and how everyone's standing there watching the same thing happen, the sunset, and it's beautiful and everything. But there's just this lightness to the atmosphere where people are really wanting to share what they've done that day and where they're heading to next and where they come from and what, the age of their children and that sort of thing. And it's just, I love it. That's one of the things I really love about travel, just that openness of people.
Yeah, it is. Well, I guess you've got a shared experience, and it's a positive, happy experience, so everyone wants to talk about things like that. And you probably tend to be like-minded people if you've, traveling in the same way, in the same place. So I guess there's kind of a few things in place that make it easy to be friends and to make
maybe
friendships.
You've worked it out now, right there, just sounding it all out.
I think Julie and I both have to thank our parents for encouraging us to travel in ways that makes it easier to meet people. I'm impressed that, back then, a couple of decades or so back, her parents managed to arrange to stay in different people's homes. And I love the story of the lady in Luxembourg who they became lifelong friends. Just such a lovely way. And, of course, my parents took us in a camper van or motorhome all around Europe, and it's an easy place to make friends at a caravan park because there's all these people running around. You can easily tell, who the families are, and kids instantly play together, and it's just a great way to travel. So I think if you want to get an extra layer of greatness out of your travels, then finding ways to set up your travels so you can make some friends along the way just makes for a really special experience. Now, my next guest today is Holly Galbraith, and she's done a lot of different travels, sometimes on her own. Then she's met people and become friends on the way, or joined up with different friends to take trips. And I think that if you usually travel sort of solo or, find someone different to travel with each time, it can make for another different version of rich experiences. So I'll let Holly tell you about some of her great experiences traveling with friends.
I've been lucky to have really great experiences where I've either travelled with someone or I've met people on the road. And I guess I sort of alluded to it before. I was living in England, and one of my friends that I went to university with was also in Europe, and she had a car and we decided to do about 6 weeks travelling mainly through Spain, but she was living in Switzerland. So we drove from Switzerland through Italy, France, and then spent most of our time in Spain. And we were friends before that, but this trip is something that really grew our existing friendship so much. And it is something that, no matter what happens, you can just never take that away. And I've had a few experiences, I think, where you started off sort of as friends, but after traveling together, it just binds you forever. I think it's just those shared experiences. Recently on the trip to Papua New Guinea, somebody who I didn't even know very well, who you might actually know, Jade, a blogger from Our Oyster.
Oh yes.
She just put up on Facebook saying, "Oh, we're looking for a 4th person to go to Papua New Guinea to share our cabin, because it'll be so much cheaper if we get a 4-berth cabin and there's 3 of us." And I saw that and just went, oh my goodness, I have been dying to go to Papua New Guinea for ages.
Perfect.
And honestly,
Great.
I think I'd only met Jade, a few times. But now, and also, she travelled with her son, who I just think is the coolest kid I've ever met in my entire life.
Excellent.
That really, really grew our small existing friendship into something that you really won't forget.
Oh, that's fabulous, isn't it? I think it either makes or breaks a friendship. Like if you know someone not very well, it's a bit of a risk to travel with them. But if they turn out to be great people, then yes, that's a binding friendship, and you've always got those memories that are, they're forever and they're of a special time. So that's, really makes a difference.
I remember with my friend with the car in Europe, I remember having a conversation with her at the start saying, okay, we don't know how we're going to go traveling together, but we're both pretty good travelers. So if this isn't working, at any point we can just bail. We can just go our separate ways and we'll be fine, rather than sort of, enduring anything that was really bad. But it definitely didn't come to that or anywhere close to that, luckily. But I remember having that conversation at the start, and I think that's a good conversation to have.
That is a really good conversation to have. But I think you also highlight something that's a really good way to pick your travel buddy, is that someone who's also kind of a good traveller or reasonably experienced. So they're kind of easier to travel with. It just made me think of when I've travelled sometimes with Di Bortoletto of Traveletto, and there's a story on the podcast about when we were in Bangkok at T-Bex last year, and I didn't get on the train and she did, and that we was trying to go somewhere together. And instead, with some people you're traveling with, they would freak out completely. You've got separated. Yeah. Oh my goodness. But Di and I just both laughed for the next hour each. So, and we eventually found each other again and it was all fine. And we both said exactly the same to each other. I knew that, you'd be fine. And we would find each other somewhere, because we're both experienced enough travelers that, we knew the other wouldn't be worried, wouldn't panic or anything. It would be okay. And we both just laughed and laughed. So it was perfect.
Yes, that's so true. So true. You wouldn't feel bad ditching them somewhere. It's probably a good point of call, or good,
Yeah, they'll survive if something happens. Yeah. So it's all good.
One of my first trips when I was about 20 to Europe, I met a girl, and I can't even quite remember how I met this girl. She was German, and we must have been in a hostel or something like that. And we became friends, and then we started traveling together. And that was fantastic, a fantastic thing to do. She was a great girl, and we stayed in touch after that trip. And it gave me a little. She was more experienced traveler than me then, and it just gave me the confidence I needed to sort of get out there a little bit more. So it was almost someone taking me under my wing a little bit, and that was a great experience. Now, that was before the time of Facebook and things like that, and we stayed in touch via writing letters to each other. But eventually that sort of faded out, and who knows what became of her.
That is a really wonderful thing about the internet era. Facebook and email and all of those other methods make it so much easier to keep in touch with people that you meet when you're traveling. I often think of a really dear friend I made in Japan who I've lost track of because we had email, no Facebook though, and her email address kept changing, and I have now lost contact with her completely. My dear friend Yuko, and I will leave a link in the show notes. I wrote a blog post, I think about 3 years ago, about my search for Yuko, and I'm still looking for her, and there's some pictures and facts. And if you think you might know a lovely girl called Yuko who was living in Eastern Osaka, then read my post. The link will be in the show notes. I'm determined to find her somehow, because I just think it's sad that I've lost touch with her. And it's the same with lots of people over the years, but at least these days, thanks to the wonderful world of social media, it is much easier to stay in touch with people who you meet on the road. Now, my final guest today is Jeff Ryan, the man who's been hiking the Appalachian Trail for 3 decades, or the better part thereof. Now, he was hiking that mostly with a very good friend of his, and we did chat about how their friendship changed and strengthened massively over the years from that regular hiking stints they do together. But this little snippet is about a completely different kind of friend. It's about man's best friend.
A dog started following us and basically adopted me as its owner, and was utterly convinced that I was her owner, and followed us for close to 30 miles on the trail over the next several days. And I was thinking about it afterwards because I was quite flattered that this dog was enamored of me. But then I actually came to realize that maybe it was because I was taking leftover turkey from the holiday meal with me in my pack that
she was just following the scent the whole time.
Right.
No, I'm sure it was your company she wanted.
Yes, I went with that too. So I finished the trip. We finished the trip, and I had to go back to this community where the dog started following us. And I went to take her home, and she didn't want to go home. She wanted to stay with me. Aww. And I wrote about it in the book, obviously, but I tried to nudge her by the backside out the door because she wouldn't leave the passenger seat of my truck. And I nudged her out, and I started driving away, and she actually got a running start and threw herself into the back of the truck up over the tailgate.
Oh, no.
And she just really was convinced that I was her owner and didn't want to stay where she came from. So I had to pull a U-turn and kind of take her back and talk to her a little bit. And then I hit the gas and sped away, and she was running after me for a while and then gave up. And I actually circled back to the town. This was, I think, originally happened in the early 2000s, and I went back in 2014 to see if the people still lived there because I wanted to circle back on my story, and the house was gone. Oh. And so there was actually no sign of the house. It's one of those very freaky things like from a movie or something where I swore that this whole thing happened. It really happened, but there's no sign of it. So a lot of the other buildings were still there, and in my mind's eye, they were exactly as I recalled them. So the fact that the house was gone was kind of funny. There's just a dirt lot there now.
Oh, goodness. They're like a ghost house.
Yes, with a ghost dog, which for many years, I thought that dog was going to show up on my doorstep someday, like those stories you read about the dog goes 1,400 miles to be reunited with its owner.
Exactly. Oh, that would have made a very good story if she'd turned up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. I just think that story's gorgeous, and I love that you can make connections while you're on the road, not just with people, but with animals too. And that has definitely happened to me. I can think of all sizes and shapes of animals who I've had connections with on my travels. Immediately spring to mind the little island of Inishmaan off the west coast of Ireland, and we would go for walks every day past a very, very cute sheep in the paddock nearby. And I don't know why that he stuck with me, but he has. He, she, probably she actually. So it doesn't just have to be people, but of course those connections that you make and friendships that you form while you're traveling, I think are just very, very special ones. So go out and nurture those friendships. So thank you very much for listening to episode 35 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. If you'd like to share some of your stories of friends you've made on the road, then hop along to our Facebook group. You'll find us at facebook.com/groups/thoughtful travellers, or just search for Thoughtful Travellers in Facebook. Don't forget 2 L's, our Australian British spelling. You can also tweet me at Amanda Kendall and use the Thoughtful Travel Pod hashtag. As always, I'll be forever indebted to you if you leave a rating or a review in iTunes for the Thoughtful Travel podcast. That really helps other people to find the podcast and to share the travel love, so to speak. Now, of course, can't go without giving a big shout out to my super duper guests today. First up, we had Julie Jones of Have Wheelchair, Will Travel. And in fact, it really doesn't matter who you are, there's something for everyone there, but especially if you or your family member has a disability and you're interested in sort of accessible travel advice, then Julie has so much good stuff on there. But it's just a happy, feel-good blog for anyone to follow, to be honest. And she's at havewheelchairwilltravel.net. And you can also find her her large and very chatty and lovely Facebook page at Have Wheelchair Will Travel on Facebook as well. After Julie, I chatted with Holly Galbraith, and you can find her at hollyg.com.au. And you can find her Tourism Upgrade podcast in iTunes as well, and I'll leave a link in the show notes. And last but definitely not least, with his tale of a lovely little dog friend he made, is Jeff Ryan, and you can find him at jeffryanauthor.com. And you can find his book Appalachian Odyssey on Amazon. It's such a cool book. I have had it at my breakfast table, browsing further through it lately, and it's just gorgeous. Links for all that in the show notes. As well, there's a link to episode 11 where Di Bortoletto and I talk about our funny incident getting lost, which I referred to when I was chatting with Holly, and also my post on notaballerina.com about my long-lost friend Yuko. So there is a link in the show notes to that. Go have a look and see if you can help me find her. Thank you again for listening, and all of those show notes will be at notaballerina.com/35. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.
Jackrabbit FM. For your ears.
Who is that? Hi, Podcast.